Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. This is John McDougall. I am the event coordinator at Murder by the Book here in Houston, and I will bring our guest, Jeffery Deaver, out in just a second. But before we do, I wanted to make just a couple of brief store announcements, let everybody know what is going on with us here in Houston. So if you have not visited us for a while, the store is open for browsing. We hope that you will come in and see us. We reopened on Halloween. We thought that was kind of a perfect day to relaunch ourselves into the world. So we're open. We hope that you'll come see us. We are still limiting it to 6 people in the store at a time just because it's a small space and we want everybody to feel comfortable. Of course, we ask that you please wear a mask when you're in, but we hope that you'll come see us. If you are not comfortable getting out in the world, we know not everybody is quite vaccinated just yet and getting out, but if you are not quite up for in-store shopping yet, we are still doing curbside pickup. We don't have the table outside anymore. So if you do want to do curbside pickup, just give us a call when you pull into the parking lot and we will run your packages out to you. Really, we just didn't, inevitably what would happen would be, it would be 6 o'clock and we would be ready to go home. We set the alarm, you walk outside and crap, there's the folding table. And we would have to remember to kind of hustle and get it in before the alarm went off. So yeah, just give us a call and we will bring stuff out to you. Always happy to help you over the phone, pick out stuff. And of course at murderbooks.com. Also wanted to mention we've got some really cool stuff coming up. Tomorrow night, we're going to be chatting with Jake Tapper about his new book, and Gillian Flynn is going to be interviewing him. She doesn't do very many virtual events, so we're super excited to be chatting with her. Next Thursday, we're going to be chatting with May Cobb and Amy Gentry, so it'll be a fun Texas night. So lots of good stuff coming up. If you haven't checked out murderbooks.com lately, take a look at the event calendar. Got lots of cool stuff coming up. And also, if you have not perused the YouTube channel or our Facebook Live events, make sure you do that. We've got a wealth of events out there that you can catch. We've done over 200 of these since the pandemic started with over 350 authors. So if there's any subgenre in mystery that you were excited about, we have an event out there for you. But tonight, we're super excited to have Jeffery Deaver back with us. This will be the second time we've done a virtual event with him. Here tonight, he's here to talk with us about the third book in his new Coulter series, and it is called The Final Twist. We've got copies of it in store. Jeff was also kind enough to sign some, can't see him because of my ring light, book plates for us. So if you order, you will get a book plate. And so I'm going to bring him out and get him introduced. How are you tonight, Jeff?
Well, very good, John. Thank you for having me. Hello to yourself, all my good friends at Murder by the Book, and guests, attendees. I hope you're all doing well.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Yeah, I'm sure we talked about this last time, but it's weird to have you have a book release and us not get to see you in Houston. You've been to the store so many times. We've had dinners together, so it's weird, but I'm glad that we're still able to do this virtually.
Well, and I have to give a shout out to my my great nieces who live in Austin who attended my signing. They've attended several of them, but I remember when one was a toddler and the other was oh my gosh, just a few years older, and they lay on the carpet in front of the table and listen to Jeff's story time. Of course, the books I was talking about were not quite appropriate for them, but now they're 11 and 15. So Shay and Bryn, hello, and their mother, Bridget, hello as well. So I hope they're tuned in now and watching.
So in case anybody has just randomly stumbled upon the video and they are not sure who Jeffery Deaver is, he is the #1 international best-selling and award-winning author of more than 40 novels, 3 collections of short stories, and a nonfiction law book. His books are sold in 150 countries and translated into 25 languages. A former journalist, folksinger, and attorney, he was born outside of Chicago and has a Bachelor of Journalism degree from the University of Missouri and a law degree from Fordham University. And also, most recently, he was just awarded the Grand Master Award from the Mystery Writers of America. Congratulations again on that.
Thank you.
And for anybody who is watching, if you did not catch the Edgar Awards live, they are actually up on YouTube. So if you want to go see Jeff accept his award and see all of the nominees and all of the speeches, you can check those out on YouTube. As I said, tonight, we're going to be chatting about The Final Twist. So Jeff, actually, we're going to do a little different tonight. Jeff actually has a presentation that he's going to do for us. So I'm going to turn off my camera in just a second and turn it over to him. But while he is chatting, if you guys have any questions for him about this book, about Lincoln Rhyme, about anything, writing, any of that stuff, please post those in the comments because I will be hanging out with you on Facebook and YouTube watching. And after he is done chatting, I will pop back in and relay any of those questions. So Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you and I will see you in just a little bit.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. And of course, it's a book event, so we have a little housekeeping. Make sure you shut your cell phones off. Oh, wait. No, you don't need to do that, do you? Anyway, we'll soon get back to the days in person book events where we do have to shut our cell phones off. The Final Twist, as John was saying, is the third book in the Colter Shaw series. The first being The Never Game, the second, The Goodbye Man, now The Final Twist. And it's about my itinerant hero, Colter Shaw, who travels the country in his Winnebago seeking rewards that have been offered by, maybe the police for a suspect they cannot find, parents for a missing child, a warden who has an escaped convict that he can't account for. And he travels around the country and uses his various skills, which I don't have time to go into at this point, though he's a very resourceful fellow. And the Final Twist follows just hours after the most recent book, The Goodbye Man, ends. And although I say Final Twist, one need not worry if you like Colter Shaw. It is not the end of the saga. It is a trilogy in a way, but I call it a Genesis trilogy, where we get to meet Colter, his family. I set up the characters in of his backstory, as well as telling three very compelling tales: The Never Game, The Goodbye Man, and The Final Twist. The Final Twist finds Colter Shaw in San Francisco, where he is not only pursuing a reward. A young woman, street musician, has gone missing, and her mother has offered a reward to try to find her. The police are not interested in what seems like a minor case. And at the same time, he is trying to track down what happened to his father, who died a mysterious death 10 years ago. And the clues have led him to San Francisco. Now, I should say all of my books have what I call a hook. The hook in The Never Game was Silicon Valley and murder in the world of computer gaming. The Goodbye Man was about a cult in the wild regions of Washington State. And The Final Twist has a villain I've been trying to craft for years. And the villain is not a single individual, although there are bad actors, but it's a corporation. Corporations do wonderful things. Corporations made the possible so that we can have this conversation. They make my word processing system so I'm able to write the books. There's no doubt about that. But they also have the element of layers of unaccountability, you might say. So while there is a human villain in the story, several of them, in fact, I love the idea of this overarching corporation named Banyan Tree Holdings. Now, a banyan tree, if you don't know it, is a very lovely tree on the surface, but it has a very insidious root pattern. The roots travel farther than any other living plant. And I love that metaphor. If I were to tell you anything more about the story, however, I'd give it away. So let me just say that Colter jumps from disaster or potential disaster to potential disaster, right down until the final twist, of which there are many, but it ends on the very last paragraph with a twist that a reviewer said brought a poignant tear to his eye. Well, enough about that. What I'd like to do tonight is share some of the tricks of the trade I use in my writing. I know some of you out there are writers, some of you hope to be writers, but I know all of you are interested in books because you're here tonight and not binging on The Queen's Gambit or The Handmaid's Tale, for which I am very thankful. I do appreciate your attendance. So I'm going to list maybe 5, we'll get to 5, 6, 7, 8 of these tricks of the trade, and they are not rules that you have to follow if you want to write a book. They are simply tricks that I've learned over the years that allow me to craft a book in a way that I feel comfortable with. So let's get to work. No, you don't need to pull out your tablets and your pens and pencils and paper. Just sit back, listen, and try to enjoy what I'm going to tell you about how these miraculous little rectangular things we call books are made. Okay, trick of the trade number 1, you write for your readers. You don't write for business. We authors make a product. Now, it's a product that is creative, certainly. It's a product I'm very proud of, but it's a product just like Procter & Gamble might make. We have to make sure we produce a product regularly. We work hard to get it into the hands of our audience. Mickey Spillane said he doesn't write for readers, he writes for consumers. I love that. We write for consumers, and we do. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by this. Let's say you have an idea that you think is absolutely wonderful. You have to run that through the filter, though, of is this best for the reader? And let's say, having mentioned Procter & Gamble, I was a product designer for that company. And I go to my boss, we'll name him Fred. And I say, Fred, you know, I had dinner with my girlfriend last night and we had pate. Have you ever had pate? And Fred looks at me with kind of bored eyes and he says, yeah, it's overpriced liverwurst. And I say, yeah, that's it. Well, I had this idea. I thought what we should do is make liver flavored toothpaste. Nobody's ever done that before. It's going to be very exciting and it's going to put us on the map. There'll be a lot of press. And I think it's going to be a public relations coup. Well, Fred looks me over and he says, Jeff, I have two questions. The first question is this a product for cats and dogs? Because that's not a bad idea. And I say, no. This is for people. This is for humans. And Fred asks his second question, which is, Jeff, is your resume in order? Because you're going to be fired. People don't want liver-flavored toothpaste. It's our job to create mint-flavored books, cinnamon-flavored books, things that people want, stories that people want. And I spend a great deal of time thinking about, is this whole concept for the book going to work for readers? Or is it going to be something that is a little self-indulgent that I think is clever, but might not be best for my audience? An example, after writing The Bone Collector, I had this idea for a sequel that was going to be called 206 Bones. There are apparently 206 bones in the human body. I may have that wrong. It might be 205 or 207. This was a long time ago. And each chapter would be named after a bone. And there would be a murder in a hospital and the killer takes apart a skeleton and hides a bone in different rooms. And I thought it was high concept and I love the idea. And then I said, is anybody going to read it? And the answer was no. So I put that idea aside because I learned trick of the trade. Number one, you write for readers. You don't write for yourself. Okay. Trick of the trade number two, plan everything out ahead of time. Outline. The world is divided into pantsers, as in seat of the pants, and plotters. Pantsers sit down with a blank screen or blank pad of paper and just start writing and let the story be a journey and discover things along the way. I am a planner. I'm an outliner. I heard a long time ago Joyce Carol Oates say this: you can't write your first sentence until you know what the last sentence is. And I firmly believe that. I spend on the average maybe 8 months working on an outline. I know every plot point in the book. I know where the story changes direction. I know where every character is introduced. I know when they leave the story, either vertically or horizontally, because not everybody survives to the last page of my books. I know where the clues are seated in, because we need to play fair. There have to be clues that allow me to spring those big surprise endings that I so am enamored of. And I found that there are people who can form an outline in their head, and God bless them. I can't do that. I need to examine charts and graphs, and I use Post-it notes stuck up on my wall. Make sure you use push pins too, because I once outlined a book with the Post-it notes. I live in North Carolina mostly, where it's very humid. Came back from lunch, and most of the book was on the floor. The sticky part had not held. But anyway, so I readjust things, and finally the outline is finished after 8 months. Then I can sit down and write the book, and I can write the book in any order. Now, I would say there are two reasons for using an outline. The first is that these books, well, I was going to say murder mystery, genre, crime fiction, are about structure as well as they're about fine prose. But I think I would go so far as to say I would rather have a well-structured book than one that is written in a very literary style. By well-structured, I mean scenes of like emotional connection between characters that are very moving, followed by a very fast action pace. If we were to put this in terms of a symphony, that would be adagio followed by andante, and with increasing levels of andante and vivace leading up to the crescendo. And then at the end of the book, there should be a coda, sort of a soft reconciliation of a theme. And an outline lets you do that. You can see the whole schematic and realize I've killed 5 people in a row. The 5th guy, we're going to not care a bit about his death. I need to spread that out. The outline helps me to do that. And also my books move very quickly. They take place over only about 2 or 3 days. And so if you ever saw the TV show 24, you know those intricate plots need a lot of planning ahead of time. So structure is a very important reason to outline. The other reason is this. Have you ever read a book that should not have been written? Yes, you don't have to raise your hand because I can't see you in answer. But if you realize that there have been books that you've read that probably should not have been written. Well, why does that happen on occasion? One of the reasons is that the author, and I'm guilty of this myself, gets a wonderful set piece idea for the opening scene. By set piece, I mean a very emotionally engaging scene. And it doesn't have to be a car chase or a shootout. It could be an intense conversation between 2 lovers that sets up a great deal of conflict between them and propels the story forward. Anyway, the author has this great idea, sits down at the computer and writes it out, and it writes itself. Out come the words. Chapter 1 is finished in 2 or 3 hours. Well, naturally, you jump into chapter 2. That's finished in maybe 3 to 4 hours. Chapter 4, chapter 5, you're starting to slow down a little bit now because the energy is gone and you're not quite sure where we're going to go next. But then you hit chapter 6 and come to a complete screeching halt. What you're looking at then is the DM, capital D, capital M, the dreaded middle of the book. And you have no idea what to put in there except cliches. Cliches like where the captain on the police force has a fight with his lieutenant, the hero, and demands his badge and gun. And then you're looking at the end and you don't see a big surprise ending, but you must have a big surprise ending because all books need a big surprise ending. We need to grab the reader by the throat and at the end make him or her feel, oh my God, I survived the end of this book and I never saw that coming. And that's true of, I would say, literary fiction as well as genre fiction. So at that point, you've got 200 pages of well-wrought prose. You can write the words, you can put them together, but you don't know where the story is going to go. So what do? You can do one of 2 things. You're going to get my take on this when I use a few adjectives and adverbs here. You can do the morally reprehensible, unconscionable, intellectually dishonest thing and tack in those cliches and put on the deus ex machina ending that is completely incredible, not good incredible, but not credible, and put that out into the stream of commerce. In other words, you give your readers liver-flavored toothpaste. And that's a sin because we owe everything to our readers. That's option A. Option B is the courageous, the morally and intellectually honest thing. And you throw out every damn chapter, even the good chapter, even the set piece chapter, and you start all over again on a book that you can write from start to finish and will give the reader the mint toothpaste they deserve. I've done both of those. They're both unpleasant, untenable circumstances. Well, let's think now. If I were to outline that book, I write on a single Post-it note, great, exciting set piece idea, and put that up on the wall. And then I start filling in other Post-it notes, and they're, here's the middle, a few things in the middle, something at the end, a few others kind of near the beginning. And I sit and stare at that for a couple days, maybe a week. And I realized there's no story here. There's no story here. It was a great set piece beginning, but a beginning is not a novel, and we need to craft a whole novel. And so what do? I wad up those 18, 19 Post-it notes, throw them out. I've wasted a week of my time. I haven't gone to the agony of writing a huge amount of prose and having to cry as I fling out those pages, and I start all over on something else. Doing an outline is efficient, and it makes sure you do not write a book that should not be written. Again, we're just talking about some random tricks of the trade that I use in writing. And if you know my books, you know that I love my twists and turns. The final twist, for instance, I mentioned it a bit, it is full of twists and turns. The final twist is indeed the last of many. And I work very hard to try to trick you I was on an interview show in, I think it was London or Manchester, England, a few years ago. And usually the radio shows are kind of softball. I'm there to hawk the book, and they're there to fill time between the important shows, the ones about football players, that is soccer players, and the important things on life in England. And that's fine. I still pick up a lot of readers that way. But generally, as I say, they're very softball, and we talk about the book and have a jolly good time. But this was different. The presenter, before we'd said a single word other than "This is Jeffery Deaver," he pointed a finger at me. We were live in the studio, and said, "What do you say to the charge that you are manipulative?" And I don't think very quickly. I can write quickly, but I don't think quickly. My mind doesn't work that way. But that particular day, I had a moment of inspiration. And I said, the charge that I'm manipulative, I say thank you. And I meant that, because it is my job to manipulate you in the books, the same way that a roller coaster ride manipulates you in the ups and downs and turns upside down aspect of the ride. And then you get off safe and sound. That's my job. That's what I do. And the twists are a big part of that. So I'm giving away a little magician's trick here, but how do you create good twists and turns? Well, I used a key word just there, magician. You don't think of yourself as a novelist. You think of yourself as an illusionist. You use misdirection. You keep readers focused on your left hand of the story, when in fact, what's really going on is the right hand. And this is a bit abstract, so I'm going to give you an idea. And any writers out there who want this, I'll give this idea to you for free. You have a book to write around it, so there's a little more to it than that. But let's say a man is injured in a terrorist explosion, and he appears to be an innocent bystander, and the police interview him. He's okay, not seriously injured, but we see subsequent scenes of him in which his behavior seems a little odd. And in fact, we learn he goes by a different identity and has fake ID cards made up. And then we learn that he meets with the fellow on the sly, who is apparently the terrorist leader. Now, the detective's very smart, and he tracks down these clues. He's a little suspicious of this fellow, and he gives us reasons why. And then toward the end of the book, he busts him. And then he learns the truth, that this fellow is actually an investigative reporter whose wife was killed in a terrorist attack some years before. And he is doing private detection work to find out who the actual terrorist leader is. Well, now we focus, thanks to the nefarious plotting choices the author has made, now we focus on a character who's the detective sidekick and who seems completely innocuous, a very nice guy. He's a good father, a good husband, but a few things make us think, you know what? Maybe he's the one after all. Maybe he's got a connection to the terrorist leader. Well, we get right down to the last page, and bang, little beknownst to us, although we should know because the author has planted clues in. In fact, the innocent bystander from the first scene who injured himself intentionally in the bombing is not only connected to the terrorist leader, he's the mastermind himself. Left hand, right hand, be an illusionist. Tricks of the trade when it comes to titles. I feel that titles should do double duty. I like the resonance they have when they mean more than just one thing. The final twist works on 3 levels. I'm sure you all know the concept of meta in fiction. That is kind of considering the book itself, not the content of the book as much as the construction of the book, how an author relates to a book. And a very meta concept for me is I love twists in all my fiction. So the final twist is metafiction embodied, because it is about my crafting twists to fool the reader. Within the book, there are characters who devise their own twists that further the plot along and create the reversals. And then at the very end, we see a physical twist, an actual physical motion of a twist that is very key to the story. I love it when that happens. So the reader thinks, oh, well, that resonates. I like that. Well, another example would be A Maiden's Grave, my book from a few years ago, made into a movie called Dead Silence by HBO. the phrase "a maiden's grave" does refer to a grave in the sense that a young woman was killed during the course of the book, but it also has a meaning to a protagonist in the book who was a young woman who learned at a young age she was going deaf, and that devastated her life. And how did she learn that? Because she went to a concert with her brother, listened to a song, and she said, "That's a great title. I'm sorry, a great song. What was the title?" And he said what she thought was "A Maiden's Grave." In fact, he said "Amazing Grace." And then when she got home, she looked it up and learned to her horror that she could not hear correctly. And that was the start of her life change. Just a fast trick of the trade when it comes to titles: make them memorable, make them weird but memorable. I think, and forgive me if any authors out there have written books with these titles. I just picked a couple at random. Let's say Dark Reckoning, Hidden Evil, High Betrayals. They could be anything. They could apply to, who knows, so they could be vampire books, they could be fantasy books, they could be crime books. They're very generic. You forget them. But you're not going to forget a title like The Laughing Policeman, a wonderful crime story. From Russia with Love, the Ian Fleming story. The Girl with All Those Tattoos, just fill in a tattoo if you like. You remember that. And if I may, The Bone Collector. Those are titles. I struggled with the title of The Bone Collector. I had probably a dozen before that, but I thought Bone Collector, it's going to stick in people's minds. Let's talk about character names briefly. Tricks of the trade, character names. A very simple rule that I follow, and it's important to don't create characters in your books that have similar sounding names. Albert and Alfred. You're going to confuse the reader. Come up with a different name, Alfred and Robert. I don't always do this. It's kind of difficult sometimes, but all my character names start with a different letter of the alphabet. And I do that for facility for readers to have a better and less confusing experience. I'm going to say, I want to check the time here. We've got a little bit of time here. Tricks of the trade number 6. Don't break the give me a break rule. And by that, I mean, don't ever write something that will result in the readers rolling their eyes and saying, "Oh, come on." Because once they do that, you've lost them. You need to make sure that your cell phones work all the time, that it's not convenient that you lose a signal or a battery goes down. Characters can't be pursuing a killer who's going to strike again in a few hours and pause for romantic dalliance. There was a book I read some years ago in which the hero in the early chapters came upon a sealed letter that we readers knew contained the secret to the conspiracy he was trying to get to the bottom of, and that he should have known that. Did he open it up and read the letter? No, because the book would then have been 4 chapters long. What did he do? He stuck it in his pocket, and there it stayed for the entire book, except for one scene where he took his jacket to the dry cleaner, and the dry cleaner returned the jacket with an envelope, the envelope inside a little plastic sleeve, and a note that said, "This might be important." Well, hell yes, it's important. It's the answer to the whole story. And then, of course, at the final shootout, he opened it up and said, "Oh, I get it now," and give me a break moment. We have to respect our readers' intelligence and don't try their patience too much. We don't need to, we can suspend disbelief to a certain extent, but not too much. Just a couple other rules here, tricks of the trade. I'm going to have to pick and choose. Here's one that I find very important. I've always been a plot-driven author. Plots are paramount to me. I have 3 plots going in a book, a main plot, then 2 subplots, sometimes 3 subplots. They interweave. They're all related in a way. They all come down to the end. The main plot has a surprise ending, followed by another surprise ending, by yet another surprise ending. In the final twist, it looks like the entire book is over with 40 pages left to go. Well, no, the entire book is not over by a long shot. So you need to have the plots that move very quickly. But I was listening to NPR about 4 years ago, and it was a very interesting program. I think it was a neuroscientist who said that in a study, it was learned that the part of our brain that responds to the people we know in real life, our partners, our children, our parents, our dear friends, and our enemies as well, the bad boss, the nefarious ex-spouse, the guy who cuts us off on the freeway. The emotional connection we have with them comes from the same source in the brain that creates emotional engagement with fictional characters. There's no difference in our mind. If those fictional characters are fleshed out, if they're real, if they're developed, if they're quirky, if they have a sense of humor, if they're evil, they have a good side. If they're completely good, no, they aren't completely good. They have a little dark side to them as well. In other words, real characters. So I decided I'd been a bit neglectful of my characters because my goal is to engage readers on every page of the book. And part of that is the palm sweating roller coaster. But the other part of that is connecting with other human beings. In other words, the reader connecting with the characters. So that's why in the Coulter Shaw books, what I've done is give him a very rich backstory. We know Coulter, we know his brother, Russell, we know their sister, Dorian, we know the father, Ashton, who's a very interesting fellow, maybe subject to a little paranoid schizophrenia, but maybe it's not paranoid because he's uncovered a big conspiracy. Mary Dove, a wonderful researcher at Cal, University of California at Berkeley, and yet she and her husband flee to the Sierra Nevadas, where she becomes basically a mountain woman going back in lifestyle-wise to the 1800s. So there's this great backstory about Coulter Shaw. And it doesn't all further the plot. It's simply because we are now emotionally engaged with these characters, and we really hope they survive the end of the book, not only alive, but not scarred psychically as well. Characters are very, very important. Well, let's see. I guess I'm going to just pick two of these at random. I have a whole bunch of them here. Let's pick what would be a good one here. Oh, well, this is an important one. It's Tricks of the Trade. It's number 13. I, like many authors, have been concerned about a migration of readers to more passive forms of entertainment. I'm speaking specifically now of streaming television, big screen movies as well, but more streaming television, which we can do sitting on our rear ends on a couch with a remote control in hand, and where we don't really have to think very much. I feel a book is the most emotionally engaging form of creativity. And why is that? Because we, the readers, participate in the creation of the story. I love Breaking Bad, one of my favorite TV shows of all time. But Vince Gilligan handed me that show. He gave me what Walter White looked like, Bryan Cranston. He gave me the other characters. He told me or showed me rather, what Albuquerque, New Mexico looks like. I loved the show. But did I think much? Did I participate? No. It was passive entertainment. Whereas when I read a book, I can still remember the scenes from 50 years ago, 60 years ago, when I was reading books and I created what James Bond looked like. Didn't look like Sean Connery. To me, I have a very distinct image. I know what Frodo looks like from Lord of the Rings, Bilbo, Legolas. I know that. The movies were very good. I don't disparage Peter Jackson in any way, but I like the idea that I participate in creating that book. And so because there's a migration away from reading, I think people still read many books, of course, but I wanted to do my part to, I guess I'd say, take on the competition. And by that, I mean this. Since The Never Game, the first Coulter Shaw book, which came out about 2 years ago, I've altered my writing style. I have come up with what I call a streaming style to facilitate reading the books, basically to give readers the same opportunity to sit down and enjoy the creative process, enjoy a good story, but still participate in crafting the story within their own heads. But here's what I've done. My books are now shorter. There are shorter chapters. The paragraphs are shorter. My writing is more staccato, I would say. I use more dialogue. It's punchier. There are no long introspective monologues. It's basically, if you were to sit down with the book in your hand, it's just like you replace the remote control for one of my books. You speed through it much more quickly. If there's a downside, it's simply this, that you can read the book more quickly, which means what? I'm a manufacturer, right? I've got to produce more to get the product into the hands of the consumer or the audience. And that's what I'm doing. This year, I wrote The Final Twist, a Colter Shaw book. This coming November, we'll see the 15th Lincoln Rhyme book that is entitled The Midnight Lock. And next year, there'll be another Colter Shaw. The year after that, another Lincoln Rhyme. So we'll be leapfrogging. I'm working on a standalone right now. I do a number of short stories as well. By the way, you can find this all out and much more than you ever want to know about me on jeffreydeaver.com and Facebook and Twitter as well. Well, I think I've harped enough on these tricks of the trade, which I find quite interesting. But if you are interested, when we get back to live presentations, I do teach courses in writing. And if you were able to survive this half hour of my lecturing and think you can handle 4 hours of the lecturing, where you will learn the nuts and bolts of putting a book together, I do hope to see you there. I think now, though, what I'll do is turn back to our good friend John, and he will field any questions you have. So please proceed if you'd like.
So I have to say, before we start with questions, Jeff, it has been kind of a treat for me to just kind of get to sit back and just hear an author talk about a book and hear a talk, parts of which, you've talked about your writing rules in the store many times, but it's been nice to just kind of, it almost feels like a normal event. And I love that you made the joke at the beginning about cell phones and all that. We actually did. We did one a couple of weeks ago with somebody, and the moderator, her cell phone went off. So just as I was about to pop back in, and I was like, oh my gosh, this feels normal. This is so great. So Renee wants to know, do your books need to be read in order, or do you think you can jump around with it?
No, I write basically two series, the Lincoln Rhyme series and the Colter Shaw series, and they are all completely independent in the sense that you will learn enough about the actions of the prior books to figure out what's going on. Now, there is an arc from the Never Game to the Final Twist. And each book takes place only about 8 hours after the prior book. So we're talking about like a long week here. I would recommend, I hate to, I am a businessman, so I like to sell books, let's face it. And John likes to sell books too. That's what we do for a living. But you don't need it to understand the story. It'll be very clear what happened in the first book. If you read The Final Twist, you'll know what happened in the first book, you'll know what happened in the second book, and you'll know the backstory from 10 years ago. But what I have found, the response from my readers, is that they like Colter Shaw. He is a very compelling character. And I tried to make him compelling. I tried to make him someone you would like to sit down with a beer with. I've had several people say, is he based on a real person, and is he single? Because they like this guy, and he's a hero. He's very much a hero, self-sacrificing hero. So no, you don't need to read them in order by any means, but I think you'll just enjoy spending time with him.
So you mentioned kind of these 3 books kind of all take place like over the course of like a long weekend, that they're so fast. So when you were writing them, how, some authors like to include things like pop culture or current events and stuff in there. But if you've been writing these books over the course of like 3 years, but they all take place so close, like how do you make sure that you kind of keep all of that stuff kind of current to when they're happening?
Yeah, I've decided not to date any of my books nor age any of my characters. I know some authors do, very respected authors, and their fans, their readers like it, that they are growing with the years. But the fact is, I really do consider myself an illusionist, and I want to create a world in which I can trick you and fool you and make you speed along. And there are obvious things I need to discuss. You cannot write about Lower Manhattan without noticing the absence of the towers. That would be inappropriate for me to do, unless I was writing a period piece, of course. I'm not. But I want readers to focus on the story itself. I bring in high-tech things, of course, but pretty much I can do that without mentioning brand names and without talking about new, very esoteric devices Do I actually use the word Bluetooth ever? I probably don't. Bluetooth has been around for a long time, but I say the earbud, they communicated one way or the other. That's what's important for me.
So Renee wants to know, do you believe that there's an ideal time frame within which to write a book? Is working on a book, say, for 2 years too long, or does it just depend on the book?
It depends on the book entirely. What I told you today was what's worked for me. And for instance, a couple writers you may have heard of, Lee Child, Michael Connelly, George R.R. Martin, they do not outline. And and someday, if they're lucky, they'll be successful, right? So, but this is what works for me. No, there's no time frame. Although I do have to say that I'm very lucky. I enjoy writing, and I enjoy writing the type of book that I write. I could not, to save my life, I could not write a big Man Booker literary novel. I just couldn't do it. I read that fiction, but I couldn't do it. I could not write a vampire story. I actually have done a little bit of occult writing for audible.com, original audio short stories, and I enjoyed that, but that's a very specialized niche. That's not going to be the thing I do. So I can produce in 1 year at least one 390, 400 page novel. And this year I did 2, and that works for me. But on the other hand, I am working on a standalone that's going to take me 2 years to write because it's more complicated. So, I think I'm hedging a little bit here, but Renee, the answer really is there's no rule, and whatever you're comfortable with, that's the most important thing.
So you mentioned Audible. So Stephen wants to know, how do you feel about audiobooks? Does hearing somebody else's voice ruin your characters in your head?
Not at all. I actually, because I work so much, I write about 10 hours a day, 8 or 10 hours a day. And that may not be generating prose, but let's just say because of the nature of this business, I read that much. And at the end of and I don't have great eyes. I've got some issues with them. And I have to, save that time for the screen and writing, or the page if I, printed out something. So I listen to a lot of books. I like audiobooks a lot. And I do have approval over the readers. So, but the companies that do this, whether it's Penguin or whether it's audible.com or whoever is doing it, they're pros. I mean, they know what they're doing. I did an original radio play for Audible called The Starling Project, starring Alfred Molina, cast with 10 actors who voiced 30 different characters. And I'll tell you, that was great fun. It's like a 1930s radio play. We just had a lot of fun doing that. But when I heard it, it was kind of magic to me. So I'm not concerned about that. I'm comfortable that there are pros in the production department who will make it work. But I do like audiobooks. And I will say this too, that I am as interested in the form the language takes as I am in what the language says. So form and content. And a lot of that is reading through what I've written and deciding if this is going to flow lyrically into the minds of the readers. I have a program, after I finish the book, before anybody sees it, I have a program called Natural Reader. The company that makes it is Natural Soft. And basically, I convert my Word file to a PDF, load it into this thing, and it reads the book back to me, word for word. And the voices are pretty good. I print out the manuscript, have that in front of me, and then I follow along, and I find typos and things like that. But what I also find is combinations of words that don't work, not only for the audio reader, but for the person reading on the page. Sometimes a surname will tongue tie the reader, and it will also get confusing in the mind of the reader. Two sibilants together, a word ending in an S. I guess a sibilant may be the initial S, but let's say a word ends in S and there's a sibilant right after that, S. That's kind of awkward, so I'll change that. But I'm very aware of the sound of words, and that may be because I was a poet for a long time. I guess like once you're an attorney, like I was, I'm still an attorney. Maybe being a poet, then I'm still a poet. But I love the way words go together, and I think that facilitates the whole experience of the book.
So Rebecca, who is a member of the Murdered by the Book book group, who we miss seeing everybody in the store, wants to know, she said they discussed in book group, so she's interested, how much control do you have over your titles and your covers?
Sure. Oddly enough, I've been in discussion with my British publisher over the last few days about the jacket for The Midnight Lock. That's the Lincoln Rhyme book that will be out in November. And the first go at the cover did not work. It was a well done drawing, but it had nothing to do with the plot. And I pointed that out. I and my agent, I have two agents. I have an agent in England, an agent in America, and we all felt the same thing. And so I actually went on Photoshop. I don't have any ability to draw with my hand, but I'm pretty good at Photoshop. So I blocked up a cover and said, I think this is more of a big book kind of cover. And I don't expect you to use this. And actually you can't, because they were copyrighted images I used, but I sent that into them. And just today we got a bang up cover. It's really good. That's kind of based on what I sent them. And so that was one example. The title of the final twist, I could not come up with one to save my life. But my editor, Mark Tavani of Putnam, said, you know, Jeff, you got so many twists in here. And there's one at the very last scene, which is that poignant one, and poignant in a good way. I mean, if your eyes swell up, it's because there's a very happy ending. And he said, how about the final twist? And I said, that's it. Also because I love the British House of Cards adaptation. I don't know if you've seen that. It came out in the 90s, I think. I didn't care for the American version at all. It was bloated. The story was, I thought, more form than substance. And but the British one was great. And the final of that trilogy was called The Final Cut, and that also dealt with nefarious corporations and politicians. So I thought, oh, that's perfect. So, but I think I've come up with almost all of my titles, one or two not. But I do, if my publisher doesn't like one, I'll come up with something else.
So Kathy wants to know, she says, it seems that so many of her favorite authors who write series have started coming out with standalones in the last couple of years. Is this something that publishers are pushing, or have authors just decided that they have other stories to write besides their series?
Well, of course, I can't speak to, and John, let me ask, are you hearing me okay?
I am, yes.
Okay, good. We're breaking up a little bit there. I can't speak for other authors, of course, but when I'm trying to decide what to write, I look at what's the best format for this. For instance, I knew I wanted to write a Coulter Shaw book, The Final Twist, and there were clues in the Never game about this nefarious Banyan Tree Corporation that may have been involved in his father's death. So, and since I've always been fascinated with corporations that seem to exist in a different dimension from other elements of society, often immune, often with power that, again, is the corporation is not accountable for its acts in many, many cases. I said, okay, that's perfect for the Coulter Shaw book, because here's the knight errant up against the big dragon of a corporation. So that was perfect for that. There are some stories that simply don't lend themselves to a series. So I have always alternated. I'll do the Lincoln Rhyme series, and those tend to be scientific oriented, crime scene oriented, police procedurals. Coulter Shaw is the kind of the modern day cowboy, the stranger who comes to town. If I want to set a book in Des Moines, Iowa, that would be the right one for Coulter Shaw to travel to. And then the standalones are the sort that are completely self-contained. The characters really have nowhere to go after that. The example would be The Devil's Teardrop. Parker Kincaid, my document examiner, is someone who is a former FBI agent, but all he does is examine documents. And The Devil's Teardrop was a well-done book. I was pleased with it. I don't mean to say that with hubris. I simply was pleased the way it worked, because it involved a single document, only one piece of paper, as the clue to stop a series of horrendous crimes. well, you can't really go beyond that. So that could not be a series book. So it kind of depends on where I'm going to go. But again, I'll always do standalone, always do the series. And it's kind of refreshing to do a standalone because I can create characters I will not kill. I'm never going to kill a main character, but I certainly can introduce a different type of peril to them.
I always think it's great for authors to throw standalones in here or there too. It's been great. The last couple of years we've seen it shift. For a long time it used to be if a writer wrote a series character and then all of a sudden they did a standalone, people were like, no, I don't want that. I only want this character and that's all I want from this person. But it's nice to see authors kind of expanding and doing more standalones because I think readers are.
And I will say for potential authors out there, I would go with the series. If you have a series within you, that's what people like because of what I said earlier, that we love the characters. I remember my response when I was a kid to Travis McGee, to Sam Spade, to James Bond, to the unnamed character in the Ipcris file, Len Deighton's great book, to Jason Bourne. I just wanted to spend time with those guys. And of course, the fantasy books too, Bilbo, Frodo, and I am a bit of a geek, if I dare say that in the terms of the books. I don't put them down at all, but I love Lord of the Rings. I do speak Elvish, so I guess I am a bit of a geek. So I do. I'm not going to do it now, but I could. A little Elvish could trip off my tongue if I've had enough to drink.
So one of the things that's kind of cool about this new series is that you have the ability to have your character move around. Where Lincoln Rhyme is kind of set in New York and he has his area. So what are some of the challenges of having this new character who can kind of go all over the place versus just kind of staying in one area that you kind of know well already?
Sure. Well, the challenge is get it right. Damn it. I'll give you an example. The book of Maiden's Grave I was talking about earlier. It takes place in a small town in the Midwest, and I went to school in the Midwest, and I remember whitewater rafting on a river. I think this was in Kansas. It may have been Missouri, and whitewater rafting, and it was not dangerous, but it was certainly what whitewater rafting is. And so in the A Maiden's Grave, which I wrote years after I graduated, I had the scene where two girls escape from a hostage situation and they grab something that floats. I can't remember what it is, like a cooler, and hold on to it for dear life while they leap into this river that I mentioned, and downstream, and they're saved by the police. The police spot them with binoculars, and they're saved. Well, I started to get some letters, and they said, "Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Deaver, the most dangerous part of that river now is tripping over a cow pie because they dammed it upstream." And I didn't research that. I named the river. If I'd had a fictional river, that would have been one thing. But I always go there. I used to live in San Francisco. And by the way, I should say San Francisco is a fascinating story. What a wonderful mix of cultures, of races, of nationalities, and economic groups. And also there are many bad actors out there. It's a city of many gangs. And so, but I lived out there and I wanted to bring the city to life, as I always do. And like New York comes to life in the Lincoln Rhyme books, where in the Midnight Lock, for instance, we actually go to the underground of New York, real places that I had been. And in the final twist, we see San Francisco. It's tawdry side and it's very posh side and everything in between. It becomes a character.
So what is something that you've read lately that you've loved?
Well, a couple things come to mind. Abigail Dean's Girl A. I don't know if you've, it's out now, and it's just a wonderful, harrowing story of a woman lawyer in New York. She's British by birth, and she has to return to the town I can't remember what small town it is in England, to deal with the estate of a parent. And it's the last thing in the world she wants to do for reasons that are revealed slowly. I love that. I also loved Elsewhere by Dean Koontz. I don't know how he does it. Nobody does multiple dimensions and time travel better than he does. And like Stephen King, he is so prolific and such a talented writer. I'm in awe every time I read him.
And if anybody is curious about Abigail Dean's Girl A, we did a virtual event with her. She interviewed Flynn Berry for us a couple of weeks ago. So if you check back through our YouTube channel, you will be able to catch that chat. I'm also a big Dean Koontz fan. It's been a couple of years since I've read anything, but Sally, who works at the store with us, has loved like the kind of more recent thriller stuff that he's done too. So I need to pick up another one of his. It's been a minute. All right. So you mentioned you've got the Midnight Lock coming up next. I think that's a great title. So you said that's out in November?
That's out in November. And I should mention that because I love short fiction, I read a lot of short stories, and I have Putnam is publishing, well, prior to the final twist, Putnam published a short story called Forgotten. And that's a Coulter Shaw short story. Has nothing to do with the final twist, but it's kind of, it's a business, right? Gets some marketing interest up in Coulter Shaw again. Then there's in September, there'll be a short story called A Perfect Plan, a Lincoln Rhymes short story. And that's kind of a prelude, a teaser, let's say, for the Midnight Lock. And I'll continue to write the short stories as well. And if you do like short fiction, which I do, I love to write it. I do, this last year I had nothing to do except watch Curb Your Enthusiasm reruns, and you can only do that for so long or write. So I've done about 5 short stories in the last year, and actually 6 with the Audible originals. And so there'll be short fiction, but go to jeffreydeaver.com and you'll be able to see everything I've been up to.
Awesome. Cool. So I think that about brings us to time for this evening. If anybody tuned in with us late, we have been chatting with Jeffery Deaver, whose newest Coulter Shaw book, The Final Twist, has just come out yesterday. As I mentioned, we have signed book plates to go with our copies. So if you order one from us, we will throw in a signed book plate. You can come visit us in store, or you can visit us at murderbooks.com. I dropped a link earlier if you want to order online. If you missed any part of the event, once we are done, Facebook and YouTube will archive it, so you'll be able to go back and watch it from the beginning. Sometimes YouTube takes just a little bit longer because it's got a step or two to do some encoding, but you can check those out. And while you're there, definitely check out the other author events. We also did a chat with Jeff last year when the second book in the series came out. So if you want to hear him talk about Coulter Shaw some more, that one is up there too. He was chatting with McKenna. Jeff, thank you so much for doing this evening. It was so good to get to chat with you.
Yeah, a pleasure. Murder by the Book is one of my favorite bookstores of all time. And it's such a pleasure. And let's hope maybe November or if not next year. I'm going to be touring. I will be touring for it. We've already got a couple lines lined up, and I'm safe. I wear a mask. I've been vaccinated. I wear a mask. We can be smart about it, but we need to connect. We authors need to connect with our fans, even if it's 6 feet apart.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's one of the, it's nice to be able to bring everybody these author events, but it doesn't compare to being able to have you in the store and have people get to watch people interact with you and get pictures and chat and the questions that come up in person and all of that. So yeah, we will keep our fingers crossed that hopefully in the fall we will be able to get to some sense of normalcy and get some authors back in the store.
All right. Thanks a lot, John. Take care, and say hi to everybody on the staff for me, and goodbye all my friends out there in the virtual audience.
Take care. We'll see you soon.